Welcome to another edition of In the Zone. Once again, a very special edition of In the Zone. Season 2, Episode 2, Round 2 of getting some very special tea. That's why I brought my own very special tea. Shout out to the Jackson Street Farm team, by the way, to London Market with this, sweet berry smash, drink berry smash for sure. My own special tea right here. So make sure you stop by 726 Adams Street anytime between 9 and 3. Holler at our young folks and they get you some of this own tea that we make here personally here at the high school here at Jackson Street Farm. But once again, we're talking about tea. Gotta bring in the sweetest one. Please let the people know, once again, reintroduce yourself.
Will do. I am Tierra, aka Sensi T. By the way, Durant's only got tea for himself, but let's not talk about it.
I am a selfish host.
Yeah, so that's me. I have the Sensi T Instagram and TikTok. Cincinnati politics all over that. Yeah. That's kind of what I do.
Yeah, and that's what we're here to talk about for sure. Like I said, this is a special edition because we have a special election coming up on this Tuesday. So make sure, if you haven't early voted yet, make sure this Tuesday, find your local polling place. Don't let them stop you. Even if you have to do, provisional ballot, things of that nature, go ahead and make sure you cast your vote. One of the most important things you can do as a citizen. I think last time we were here talking about really just the election, the Republican side, the Democratic side. Issue one is just, I think, an overall just blatant, just trying to make a true shift of power, and sometimes I give the Republicans credit sometimes. They're really bold with it, especially here in Ohio, about what they're trying to do, what their agenda is. If you can, Ms. Powell, just kind of just let the people know what is issue one at its core.
So just to make it simple, because I feel like it's getting very complicated and very messy. You're seeing all these different ads that absolutely have nothing to actually do with issue one. From a simple standpoint, is it would require, if people voted yes for it, would be majority rule would be 60%. So they would require 60% for amendments. So that means that it would be harder for us to change the Ohio Constitution. And, right now we tell everybody your vote matters. And so if one vote is one voice, it kind of goes against that whole notion in a nutshell. And then the whole thing about instead of getting the votes in 44 counties, it would be the 88 counties. So it would just make it harder to change things.
And the crazy thing about the narrative is that they're trying to say that they're actually protecting the people, that they're making it less periodic, that they're making it more so that, special interests can't get involved. But if you have to reach out to all 88 counties, that in itself is a whole different resource that I know if I'm trying to organize myself, I don't quite have. So once again, I give the Republicans credit.
A for effort.
A for effort. They put it out there, but just like always, this is why I really love Ohio politics sometimes, because it is one of the few states that still has this piece in there where, as a citizen, I can make amendments, at least start the process of making amendments to my Constitution.
Right.
And it really keeps us engaged in that process, and you saw the response. You've been hearing a lot about abortion with it, but abortion is a part of it, but it's not an abortion issue. So can you touch upon a little bit about why abortion is one of the conversation points of this issue?
I think so. We can throw the abortion, we can throw the constitutional rights, all of those things in there, because all of those things are going to require the amendments to the Ohio Constitution, right? Yeah. And so that means that it's just going to take more people, more percentage. It's going to take that 60+% to vote to get it on there. So it'll make it harder. And then I think one thing we have to look at is, even though old things aren't always the best, we know what's happening right now is this has been the way it has been for over 100 years. And for them to all of a sudden try to change it, you have to really question what the motive is,
And you always have to. And that's the biggest thing, because as you talk about what the motive is, what's the consequences on the backside of it if you don't participate, once again, in the democratic process of what they're trying to do. So that's why we really want to have this conversation. So we had last week a conversation with a gentleman by the name of Double D, and we were talking about, now medical marijuana and where that stands in Ohio right now. If that's an issue that you want to change, and not just change, make sure you're getting the safest product for individuals who are going down that route, because, different regulations make different things. Allowing that to be, once again, held by the people, because that's what democracy is supposed to be. The people. It's a checkpoint against legislators who think that they have all the answers. Legislators that think that their special interest money is the ones that they should be listening to versus the actual individuals. And man, this attack on it, once again, give the Republicans, an A for effort. Once again, I think one of the leading individuals on it is Frank LaRoche. So, I think he was quite blatant once again on his stance of it, because I think he said, and once again, I'm going to go back and double check this to make sure, so paraphrasing, we are not going to allow a constitutional bill that's going to make an abortion piece happen here in the state of Ohio. And I think that, once again, your role as an elected official is to represent the people and not to undermine the people. So Frank LaRoche is up this year. And, I'm sure he's probably going to win his primary. But if you're fired up about issue 1, make sure that you also get fired up when it comes down to who's sitting in those seats.
Yeah, and I was about to jump in on that. So my thing is, Twitter has been tearing Frank LaRoche and his office up about them sending out the email saying that the election was the 2nd instead of the 8th. So that tells you a lot of what you need to know. And to your point, I am very excited to see. I heard that the early voting numbers have been way up. Yeah. And I think that it's exciting to see people are realizing how important this truly is. And we're seeing people get out to early vote. But to your point, this has been made a big issue. People on both sides are spending a lot of money, which is why I think so many people are coming out. Yeah. But to your point, we need people to keep that same energy when it comes time for these other elections. There's more than just the presidential election. There's more than just city council. You have to vote for your Secretary of State. You have to vote for all these different things. And I think that we need to really become more engaged and more educated on the whole process of all these different offices, because I mean, I'm 35 and I've jumped into this political scene not too long ago, and there's still things that I've learned. There's things as an adult. I remember I started voting at 18, but looking back now, I'm like, how was I voting? Because I didn't know any of the things that I know now when I was 18. So it's like we need to not only encourage people to vote, but encourage them on what they're voting for and why they're voting, because I think that's a big help.
And like you said, participating in the process at 18, even if you're not all the way sure, all the way confident on what you're exactly voting for, that exercise and stressing that exercise out is important. Once again, shout out to the 80s babies too, 35, 36, we do this
88.
87, we do this out here like a good pair of gas, 87, it gets to where you got to get to. It might be a little cheap, but we get to where you got to get to. But speaking of getting to where we got to get to, the politics in Ohio still allows the small person to make that stance. But if you do not go out there and really fight for what it is that you want, you cannot continue to keep complaining. And that's one thing that gets on my nerves the most about Cincinnati, gets most on my nerves about the black community in Hamilton County, is that we do a whole lot of complaining, but we have so much power within our legislation to actually change a lot of things. What do you think we can do to get on this type of page, to get on this type of program that the Republicans are on, where it's that aggressive, really getting on the attack of what we want? What do you think we have to do to kind of get this type of game?
So when you say we, are you talking about Democrats?
No, I'm
or
not.
Just us young folks, or just people politically involved and engaged?
I want to say those with a like-minded mindset that things are not always moving in a progressive direction that fits the working class individual right now. The 35, the 80s babies who are now funding Social Security, the ones who are putting up and paying the bills on a lot of the legislation, a lot of the wars, a lot of the tax cuts, a lot of the things that were taking place by, a generation before us. We're the ones that's handling it. So right now, since we're handling it, that's what I mean by we.
Yeah.
So even if you're a Republican, even if you're a Democrat, if you're a Green Party, if you Black Lives Matter or whatever, I think that this is a true opportunity to really figure out what we want from a legislation, especially here in Ohio, because you can see that if you're trying to change it, why are you trying to change it? And I'm sure it was not the everyday individual, white, black, or indifferent, that thought about this. So that's what I mean by the we.
I think the biggest piece of that, and it's one word that's coming to mind, is organized. I think that that's one thing that the Republicans or these, and I'm not even going to say Republicans because there's a couple of Republicans that I actually care for, but I'm going to say these, what do you call them, far left, right wing, I don't know which side, I always get that still mixed up to this day, but the extremists are well organized. They organize like no other. That's why their issues are on the forefront. You know what I'm saying? I think that we have to start to organize. I think in Hamilton County, there's a lot of bickering for no reason. I think sometimes we may disagree about one thing, and so then we act like we disagree on all things. I think that we really need to get organized. There's division within the city, within the county, and I wish that we could come together. And I think that's probably statewide as well. Like, if there's things that we care about, let's find a medium for us to go ahead and organize and put those things on the ballot. It's like there's so many issues that need to be addressed, but because people have made a different train of thought, it's like we can't work together at all.
So you are really involved, really deep in the Cincinnati and Hamilton County politics. What is that buffer? What is the barrier that's really stopping us from organizing? Because it seems like we got some historical people that are in these places of power that have done some historical things. So what is the barrier that's stopping us from organizing?
You want people to be mad at me?
No. We just having
And
a
that's
conversation.
okay.
We just in the zone. We
It's
just in the zone chilling.
egos. Egos.
Yeah.
That is the biggest thing, is egos. I feel like, I'm very honest and transparent. Like, I haven't always been on this side of politics. Like I said, I started voting when I was 18. My mom used to take me with her to vote as a kid. They had kids vote back then, which I think they need to bring back, because these are learned behaviors. So I started voting at 18 because I watched my mom vote, and she took me, and you were able to vote as a kid. You had your own little ballot, and they even reported those in certain places, But I think the biggest thing that I see now is egos. People don't want me telling them my thoughts about what I'm hearing or what I'm seeing, because I'm only 35. I'm new to this. They've been doing this since before I was born. Which, you pay homage, but times change. Things change. We all have to put our egos to the side. And I can't say that I know everything just because I'm out in the community, because sometimes you do have to look at the history of something to know what's coming forward. Yeah. But I think that sometimes it's hard for people to put their egos to the side and work with others. And I think if we can get past the egos and actually organize together in some capacity, I think we can have a strong local government.
And that's what I do appreciate right now, especially those 80 babies, us right now, who are really involved in the politics right now, because we don't seem to have, at least right now, an ego trip. I don't think that, once again, my doors are open to anybody. So if you want to come on and speak and, put your piece out here, you're more than welcome to get in the seat, sit in the zone. But we talk not just here, but all the time about what we would think, what we would like to have, the approaches and how to organize behind the scenes. And right now, it seems like we're to the forefront. We're able to make some of these things happen. You see what's happening on Juneteenth. You see what's happening in the culture of Cincinnati. And I can't always say that that is the influence of those that came before us. Now, I will say those that came before us may have influenced us individually, but I can't say that they left a pathway, that they left a legacy of organizational politics for us to really follow. So I hope that is something that, if we are truly going to stay in this game, if we're truly going to try to make an effective pathway in Hamilton County on people that look like us, people that feel like us, people that, just want to have an ordinary, conversation about how my life can go, that we can make these strides forward and then leave a pathway to cast behind us. Because if it becomes one of those things where it's about, look what I did, look what I succeeded.
Ooh, you about to strike some nerves.
Look, I'm just saying, if that's what it's all about, then we're not in it for us. Yeah. And I guess I can say that specifically for the village of Lincoln Heights, because Lincoln Heights was built upon the we. How can we as black people have a safe haven where we can control our own government, give ourselves our own jobs, and then somewhere down the line, it did not become about that we anymore. It became about, how can I show what I'm giving to my community? And that's not always a bad thing, but that cannot be the main goal.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that that's one thing that I'm super blessed with. My biggest mentor is Rodney Christian, our president of our community council. I've been around him since I was 8, 9 years old. And that was always his thing. It was never, people always give him his accolades, and he is very humble and not really wanting to say I. He's always like, it's my team, it's we, it's what we have done, us, our, he used those pronouns. And I think that was something that was always very humbling to me, even though, he might have sacrificed the most. Like, he used to put us in his car, his little Escort. There used to be a bunch of us, and he used to take us to Forest Fair Mall, small things like that. And so I think that Rodney really groomed us to be leaders,
Yeah.
and so Rodney gave us help build on the traits that we had. Everybody ain't everything. Like, I know that I've always been outspoken. They used to always tell me I talk too much. So he knows I've never been afraid to talk in front of people. So he helped me expand on that trait, on that skill. And other people have other things like organizing skills that Rodney really helped us expand on. And I think that people like him have influenced me. And like you said, there's people up here in Lincoln Heights who have influenced you. I just think that those elders are few and far between. There are a lot of people who have done a lot of things, but they haven't reached back or reached down to the next generation to say, look, this is what I have done. Let me let you learn from my mistakes. And even now, 35 I don't think is that old, but even now, Rodney is very adamant on he's getting older, he's passing it on to us, but we also need to be looking at those 17 and 18-year-olds who we need to be teaching now to kind of think, because there are things that I learned. Like I told you, I was voting at 18, but I had no idea what I was voting for. That's when I was voting straight down slates. Whoever gave me a piece of paper, that's how I was voting, but I didn't. I was doing it blindly. And so I do think that, like, there has not been enough elders really teaching, more criticizing than teaching.
Man, I love that. More criticizing than teaching right now. So much this instead of how, man. A lot of this instead of, this. Biggest mentor I had outside of my family, Carl Westmoreland, really, once again, when I dove into politics, when we started this Heights movement thing, he gave me a call out the blue. Rest his soul. Come down to the Freedom Center, come holler at me. If you're Elbert Daniels' grandson, definitely just want to pick your brain. And the knowledge that he poured onto me within an hour, right? And the passion that he presented, even at his seasoned age, you can feel the energy. And he was willing to give the blueprint. And he said, look, my doors are always open. My phone calls are always open. People say that a lot.
And don't mean it.
Don't mean it.
Or want to tell everybody what they gave to you or did for you. So.
And once again, I don't get that. And I don't think that is a positive or successful pathway moving forward. So I hope that, if anything, that we, and I say we, once again, that same mindset can slowly start changing that pathway. Because I do want to give homage to the generation that came before us. You did have a lot of great successes. You're still having some great successes. I don't want to make it seem like that they're not still in the game, not making changes. But right now, in a lot of ways, you're also creating barriers, and you're also creating blockways for those who come in behind you.
Absolutely.
And it's tough, and it's hurtful, and it's allowing the Republicans right now to come up with things like Issue 1 that's about to come up and really just we got to make sure it's safe for YouTube. So that's really just screwing us over.
Yeah.
That's really just screwing us over. But yeah.
I do think too is that, to your point, I think the people in our generation now, we do respect and see the struggles that the people before us had to go through, right?
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like, a lot of them were black, a lot of them were having to go against the grain of what was already put in place. And so sometimes maybe they felt like they had to fight with each other. So that's natural for them. That's how we're bred, unfortunately. Yeah. And so, but I think that our generation is starting to realize that, like I said, we may not agree on every single thing, but we know that we actually are stronger together. Yeah. And so what I like to say and what I tell people all the time is, if me and you disagree, Durance, the world ain't gonna know we disagree. I might have to call you or send you a text and be like, look, bro, we disagree on this issue. I just want you to know we gonna know where each other stand. It's not gonna be me blasting you or telling somebody else that how I disagree. I might tell them we disagree, but I'm not gonna bash you for disagreeing with me. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, we stand on two different sides of the issue. At least I know where you stand. But that doesn't mean that I can never work with you. We just ain't gonna agree on that issue. But I think that we have to be careful about how we bash each other. You know what I mean? Like, we can't do it in the public. We have to do it behind closed doors, because sometimes you give people that ammo to divide and conquer when we do that. And I think our generation recognizes that. And so we might be in this picture kumbaya today, but tomorrow I might call you like, why would you do this? Da-da-da. But nobody else knows we had that conversation.
And we all understand we're human. Now, how I think our generation moves, once again, real G's moving silence like lasagna. Shout out to one of the greatest rappers of all time, shout out to Wayne. But that's how we operate, which is so crazy because when you talk about some of the messiness on social media,
Pooh, child.
it's the generation of before us. We sometimes sit back and look like, man, what the heck y'all out here doing? Why are we out here putting our business out here like that? Once again, on a platform that's really not made for you, but
For
hey,
everybody to see and to screenshot and to screen record and to cause messiness.
but then it gets back to once again the teaching and not the actual, the criticizing and not the teaching. Like you're quick to you got to watch you put on social media. You got to watch how you conduct yourself. You got to watch how you do these certain things. But once again, you're talking about the examples that you're setting. You're talking about how can we now really unify and find that true cognitive, nucleus, that glue that really holds us together. It seems like we got to be ones to build it because if you're talking about who's really passing it down, and the examples that you're setting of holding it all together, keeping, as you said before, not spilling the tea.
Right. It ain't
Man.
everybody business that we ain't getting along today. You know what I'm saying? That's it. That's all. And like you said, I think that as a state, as a county, as a city, a lot of times when you see the party, specifically in this case, I feel like the Democratic Party has been for the past couple of years all over the place, and people are divided within the Democratic Party. And if we know that and the world sees that, the Republicans see that, like you said, they'll swoop in for their chance to go ahead and divide and conquer. And it's unfortunate. So I would like to see that kind of be on the turnaround.
I've never put myself in any type of label when it comes to political teams. I'm an American. I'm not a Democrat. I'm not a Republican. I'm an American. Now, that in itself comes with its own set of baggage. But at the end of the day, that's the squad I got to claim right now until, we make that move to Ghana, shout out. But no, I say that to say the political stripes of Democrats and Republicans, once again, you can't sit there and say that whole thing that who's going to criticize me that's saying, hey, you said you're an American. Well, shoot, the Democrats were the ones that, put us in slavery. The Democrats were the ones that went to war for this in the Civil War. The Democrats were the ones that really held back a lot of rights and a lot of things of that nature. They are the party of labor. Now you get into, the Reagan era and things of that nature when you're talking about the Civil Rights Act and things of that nature. That's where you really got a shift of Republicans and Democrats. And then once again, you can really talk about that on the back end of it. The Republican Party, if you're just talking about name only, the reason why, the Democrats have their thing is a donkey because of jackass for Andrew Jackson. Like this is whole, you know what I mean? So there's so many political, historical, traumatic pieces that get into the names of which party you represent. I don't represent any one of them. And I know that was a long soliloquy to kind of get to that point. I want those parties to come to us. The same way I was recruited in basketball, the same way I was recruited in football, the same way they come recruit us in all these different type of sports. I want them to come recruiting us on what our vote means. Like, I think that's what we got to start striving towards.
Yeah, and I think that history of that is important. And what I'll say is, once again, we are voting is a taught behavior. And I think that for years, obviously I'm a registered Democrat, but I think for years that's what we're taught. Growing up, we're taught, like even when my mom was voting, she voted Democrat. And, me and her have these conversations now. But it's like, I think that our generation are more along the lines of independent thinkers.
Yeah.
And so while many of us are registered Democrats, I think that we are more so, if we really, truly wrote down our values and looked at both sides, we probably more independents. But I think in regards to politics, you got to pick a side. Independents typically don't win.
No, they don't typically win because that's the structure of the game.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at a lot of the waves in politics, and not going to sit there and say I'm a true historian, but I dabble in history a little bit and figure out patterns of how we got here. Excuse me. There's ebbs and flows, peaks and valleys of all these different parties. So you're getting to a situation right now where the Republican Party seems to be imploding on itself. They're trying to figure themselves out kind of in a cultural state. The Democratic Party right now that's really trying to find its identity is so spread out that it's almost in a place that it cannot be stable. So it's going to be
and that's scary.
Yeah, no, well, it's scary or is it an opportunity? Because it's just like anything else. If you play it like the stock market, or if you play it like anything else, if you're going to treat these namesake parties, these organizational parties that's supposed to be supporting us, which I don't really feel a lot of support from either one of the parties, quite frankly. If you're saying that in a namesake only, that one, it looks like, based upon patterns, that it's not stable, that is going to last because you're trying to do too much. And you have another one that's crumbling up on itself just by its own bigotry and hate. So on one side of, as you said before, the extremists are the ones that are leading the conversation because they're able to now organize in the margins. So those that are in the middle kind of all have a like-minded ideal. You know, that's where, once again, you talk about the we factor. I think the we factor can really almost establish itself in a new, almost medium party. Now, I don't want to say a party because, once again, I feel like you're.
I was about to jump on you about that. Okay.
But that's what I mean. Like, but it's not really a party because, but I want it to be more so as a true conversation. That now, if everybody can now tear away those labels of Democrat and Republican and truly make, if those margins are the ones that's trying to siphon our votes out, then those are the ones that's really trying to lead these conversations. Because I don't agree with every single independent thing that the Democrats say, especially to how far some issues go.
Yes.
The same way that everything that Republicans say aren't nonsense, especially when you get into local politics. So now, if you're really having that conversation, talking about, all right, best idea wins, I don't care what color you're wearing. I don't care what mascot you have on, because both of those mascots say, man, F you as a black man, if you really get down to it.
Yeah.
So really get down into the policy side of it. But a lot of folks are tricked. I shouldn't say tricked. A lot of us have behaviors that we've constantly done over and over again, and they feel safe. And they feel comfortable. And as soon as that kind of system seems to be breaking down, you said before, it seems scary. I don't necessarily see it as scariness. I see it as an opportunity right now for those that can be as aggressive as these Republicans are to really take a hold of it and leverage it to now say, look, that's not working. That's not working. But we've always had the answers.
And I think that's hard because we are creatures of habit. You know what I'm saying? Like you said, people, especially the older people, like those that are in their 50s and 60s, they have known nothing but to vote down slates. You know, like it's almost sickening being at the polls and you try to talk to them about a candidate. Are they on this slate? If they're not, then no. You know what I'm saying? Like,
what's more powerful, fear or hope, though? Because I think that's fear. I don't think that's hope involved in that at all.
Yeah.
I don't think none of the parties are providing any type of hope on a game plan of where we're going. Yeah. So that thing, once again, if all you're voting for, the true emotion that you're voting for right now is nothing but fear. Fear of change, fear of the other person, fear of the other side of the news, fear of even, you know how many Democrats are scared to even turn on Fox News? Like, oh my gosh, I can't even listen to that crap. I'm like, you should hear what they're saying, because a lot of it, is craziness, but you should at least hear what the craziness is, because they're still planning how to deal with your tax dollars. Yeah. So erasing that fear to really get down to the true nitty gritty of, man, where my dollar's going. Because look, at the end of the day, you care about how much that watermelon's costing, you care how much that milk is costing, how much gas is costing, but then at the end of the day, you won't have the nerve to walk up to your local official and tell them, hey, this is how I feel.
And that's why I think that people have to, so my big thing with this is, one, obviously I want to get people out to vote for issue 1. The second thing is I want to make sure that people are actually registered. You know, Ohio did a lot of the purging. So a lot of people who have not voted in a while, they are no longer registered to vote. So we're trying to get people to understand that and check it. And then also the people who are registered to vote, we have to make sure that they get out. There's so many people that are registered. And like, you know, I've been talking about this for the past couple of weeks of how many votes the Cincinnati City Council gets now compared to what the number of votes that people used to get back in the 90s. Our population has grown, but the number of people who vote has went down. And I think that people have to realize, like, if you've been voting and you're voting the same way for the same people, for the same thing all the time, and your life has gotten worse, then you have to start thinking independently about what can you do different when it comes to the politics.
But that gets down to it again. Has that happened since the blue wave, I think, of 2012? I think that was 2012 when there was just a massive sweep of Democrats. That might have been 2010, like it might have been 2010, 11, somewhere around those.
You know, somebody go fact check you in the comments.
That's fine. That's fine. Please fact check me on that, because keep that same energy when it comes down to fact checking the successes that's come through. Please fact check when it comes down to black success rates. Please fact check me when it comes down to black health disparities. So if you want to sit there and fact check, oh, it was 2012. The Rounds don't know what the hell he's talking about. Well, you can also come down here and meet me, and we can also have a further conversation.
But that's local politics. That's the local egos and nitpickiness I'm talking about.
So please continue to nitpick on that, and we'll continue to work on the problem. So as you were getting down to the increased amount of Democrats that are taking over the city right now. So if I feel like I'm going to win the game, if I feel like I have a rigged board against me, that there's so many Democrats and there's so much blue in Hamilton County, especially the city of Cincinnati, that our city is going to stay that way, why would I go out and vote? Why would I participate? And let me tell you why I've seen something very similar like that here in the village of Lincoln Heights. Majority black community. Obviously, it's not no true split among liberals and conservatives.
Right.
You know? It's kind of, those politics are a lot of the same. So it really gets down to presenting what you're trying to vote for, what you're trying to do, what change you're going to make. Because if not, you're going to allow the same people to get there over and over again. You're going to have the same mild successes, which in politics are not wins, because now everything's going down that way while everybody else around you is passing you up. And I can see that happening for the city of Cincinnati. Right now, you're on a swing up. Right now, the city of Cincinnati is riding a hell of a ride, and I love it as somebody who doesn't have to pay the taxes in Cincinnati, but definitely gets to go down there and hang out and spend some shopping money down there and helping the economy in that front. But I don't know how long that can keep you sharp if all you're going against is other Democrats and all you're going against is other bickering amongst yourself. I don't see that as a true success. I think you really need a balanced, at least conversation in local politics as well, too.
What has happened this week, though, where I have seen, to your point, our council is 8 Democrats, 1 Republican. I think the vote about the Hoffman School and the historic preservation was the first time that I've seen, and I could be wrong because I know, like I said, somebody will fact check me and tell me I'm wrong. But this is probably one of the closest or most split votes that I've seen this council do in this, this particular council. It was a 4-5 vote.
Yeah.
And I think that what I've seen this week personally is, I appreciate, even though the 4-5 vote, I understood both sides, and obviously I stand on one side as a community council person. Yeah. I understood where many of them, why they voted, and so I appreciate what happened this week. Prior to this, I was with you. It was like, everybody voting the same, they thinking the same, they're not doing nothing different. But this week, I actually heard, I promise I probably never heard Victoria Parks really take a stance on anything.
What do you think about that issue made it so, what do you think made it so dynamic that vote was so, split?
I think there's a couple different factors I'll hit on real quick. Let me just say, I was happy to hear Victoria give her explanation. Yeah. I was so happy to hear Scotty, because sometimes they're not really vocal. And if they are, they say a lot of words, but it's like, it's still kumbaya-ish. I know that's the criticism that they always hear. But to me, I think there were a couple different factors in this issue. I think, one, people were looking at it as Evanston is a black community. This school, Hoffman, has been there for a long time, and it's now a church. Mingo, who's very respected, is a pastor of that church. I think that people were looking at it as, how can we help him? How can we protect him if he needs to make this sale? And so people were on the side of, the developer needs to be able to do what he wants to do to make sure that Mingo gets his money, which I understand. But on the flip side, the community council, let me back up before I get to the community council.
Take your time.
The preservationists, who were mostly white people, were for the historic preservation, right? And so it's like, well, where y'all was at when the church been falling apart, when he needed help before that, and why now? And is it because it's a black developer? So it became very racial. Like, especially, I don't know if you dabble in Twitter, but the whole vote became very racial, and it was racially, that's what people were talking about. But on the flip side, forget the preservationists, right? Like I said, I don't agree with that, and whatever with that. But for me, as a community council person, the community council actually was on the side of Mark it historic. So for me, if we say the community councils should have a voice, but then you go against the voice of the community council, for me as a community council person, that's tough to hear because I don't want them to set the precedent of community councils don't matter. And sometimes that happen when these developers do come into our neighborhood. They totally go around these community councils, and that's not okay. So I don't want this vote to set that precedent. And then the second thing is that I do understand the other side. Like I said, this is a black developer, and we have not really seen this council come down on white developers like they were coming down on him.
We don't never do that.
Yeah. But what I also would say, and I know it's a touchy subject because he's black, but we can't forget who this particular developer is and what he had a hand in. So that's why this was one of them votes where I would have voted. I would have voted on the side of the historic whatever because of this particular person. I wouldn't have did if it was somebody else. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But I do respect both sides because they both had very tough decisions to make. But I was happy to see this split vote. I was happy to see them not vote just to be in agreement. I was happy it was so close.
And I love that. Like, I love that.
People
and
actually appreciated that.
And it makes the conversation, once again, more engaging. Folks, jump into it, especially have more of a stake in it. Now, what scares me a little bit, this is the part that scares me. Not the fall of Democrats or Republicans, but the fact that community councils are not being properly represented by their city councils. Now, see, in Cincinnati, the way that their politics are set up, like, what is it, 52 different, 52 different communities that
It's
make up?
yeah.
Yeah, that make up.
And not every community has a community council. I think it's like 47 out of the 52, but I know they'll fact check me.
Yeah, but even still, but you only have, 7, 8 city council members, maybe not, and a mayor, which is 9. How do you have equal representation? And that's the piece where, once again, I tell everybody, like, why do I love the Village of Lincoln Heights so much? Granted, we have our own pitfalls, we have our own issues, we got our own struggles, but it's ours.
Wait, are you for districts?
And the city of Cincinnati?
Yeah, would you be for districts?
I would be for a policy because I'm not into labels, but but I would be for a policy, and it's very similar. You structure it based upon not just obviously your territory. So I'm getting in the district. So yeah, but I think where you get a little bit different, and I think where people get a little bit nervous about that is the representation of what those districts look like. And then sometimes if there's districts that are specifically that fit one demographic, they're going to get treated with a certain indifference versus others.
Right.
So when building districts out, I think that's something that you got to take into account as well too. I'm not always for either. If you give me mine, let me build my own thing out for it. And once again, that's just because I come from, once again, the Village of Lincoln Heights, and that's kind of how we were built. You know what I mean? It was a community that was supposed to be a lot bigger than what it was. They chopped it all the way up and said, this is what you got, what you're going to do with it, and we're still here. So I'm not always necessarily opposed of if you challenge black people, if you challenge people that don't always have the best leg up, that they can come out and swing and build something better, I'm always going to bet on those people. Does history always agree with me? No, but I live in Lincoln Heights, and we go against the grain on that front.
Yeah, so let me ask you, because I know we done talked about some heavy stuff.
Yeah.
Were you at the Black Music Walk of Fame?
Yeah, I was sitting next to, shout out to, Miss Yvette Simpson, and shout out to another Lincoln Heights legend, Miss Dolores Lindsay, and my other fellow councilwoman, Linda Childs Jeters. But yeah, we was on third row.
I feel like that. So I was on third, but I was on the right.
Yeah, okay, you was on the right side.
Yeah, I was on the right
yeah.
side, close to where you come in. So I was so excited to see, so many people there. Everybody looked nice and they white, except for the ones who did not follow instructions. Y'all kill me coming to events with color codes and the rounds. I hope you had on white, because I really have a pet peeve when there's a color coordinated event. And it's always the few people that just got to wear something different, and it irritates me. Y'all wouldn't have been allowed at my event. I would have escorted y'all out. But just to see your opinion, I kind of missed all of the speeches.
Oh, so
What do you think about some of those speeches that happened?
So I ended up leaving right after the main performance and everybody, and then they did their main thing. I wanted to see Alicia come out and do her piece. So, but I am kind of I am aware of kind of what we're speaking on. So I just want to make sure that was clear too,
Yes.
to get some context. I will put it this way: my complaint that's always been about Cincinnati and Black Cincinnati, it's always the same people. We're always celebrating the same individuals, and it's always seemed to be the same conversations. So my thing when it just comes down to any event that we do, and but once again, I want to make sure that this does not sound like a a bad thing to Alicia, a bad thing to the Black Walk of Fame, and a bad thing to those that put this together, because that is an important thing to Cincinnati to have us here. I do want to make sure I put this disclaimer out before I put down anything that may sound negative, because it's not about them. It's about Black Cincinnati. My first NAACP event I went to is when Brother Chris Smitherman was still the president. I think this was 2010. The front row that we're talking about, where I'm talking about to your right, to the left, is the same people. Might be a couple splashes of new people in there. It's the same. So these speeches that they're talking about, I hardly ever hear, as we continue to have the same conversation, about how you're going to now, who is the next one up? Who are you uplifting? Who are you bringing about, or is this just another opportunity, another piece to now pump my chest? And that is the thing about not just these speeches, these presentations, these events, all of them. It's the same people, it's the same stuff, but we still have the same problems. So
Interesting.
That's kind of my stance on that, because why I felt like at that point, even that, like I mean, we had to go because we had to get some stuff done with our young people. They had the work the Macy's Music Fest concert.
Okay.
So we had to get up out of there. But I don't know, man. When I sit here and look at this piece behind me and what my biggest motivation of this work, why I got into it, so I don't even know how much longer I'll stay in it at this point, because, you know, as you said before, the barrier is not white people. The barrier is not Republicans. The barrier is some of the same people that was in that Black Walk of Fame room. And they're not uplifting the kids that created this. Now, some of them, you know, as a whole, as a mission, is uplifting the individual young people that created stuff like this, that work these type of, you know, programs, that's working behind the scenes, that's really up next.
Yeah.
Until that's the word, until that's the mission, it's all the same. Because I don't know about you. I can say me personally, when it just comes down to overall assistance in this, man, we've been out here freestyling. We've been out here trying to figure it out on our own. Now, there are, once again, if I shouted out the few individuals that truly had our back, and I know I'm going on a whole different soliloquy on
Yeah,
this
you don't want to miss out on nobody, though.
Yeah. And they know who they are. They know who they are. But there's a lot of folks out there that claim to have a whole bunch of stuff, doing a whole bunch of great things, but then when you look out and see the city right now, who's assisting Iris with the Water Boys right now? You know what I mean? Like, who is really out there helping Dominique Peoples run those farming programs right now? Who's really out here really grinding with you on making sure that there's a constant conversation on Cincy T right now? Who's really pushing these guys that's next to go up, to step up?
Yeah.
And like I said, even with, I think what we're going to later, the Black Politico, who's really forcing that through? Is that the next generation really holding it down for somebody else, or is that next generation pushing something through because they said it was a need? My bad, that was a long soliloquy.
No, but I do want to say this. I think that, like you said, y'all out here freestyling. I think that's one thing about us 80s babies, and I'm going to keep giving 80s babies the shout out because, you know, they always like to call us other names. I think that we are good at freestyling. I think we have the soul of hustlers. We were raised by hustlers, so we know how to hustle. And I say that in a good way. We know how to get what we need. And I feel like when we passionate about something, you know, whether it's you with the kids out here, the farming, the gun violence prevention, we know how to hustle our way and get stuff done. And I think that might irk some people because it's not taking us as long because we learning how to work smarter, not harder.
With each other. Don't get me started on the gun violence situation in the city of Cincinnati, because our kids out here working, they're still hearing the fire gunshots all day long. So I know we're still working towards that. I know that's moving at a good pace. But as you talk about just an overall granulous failure, allowing that to take place for 75 years, and kids to hear that and have to grow with that, you know, we can do better. Hopefully we can do better. Hopefully, this doesn't make people feel a certain type of way. This episode, because I know we got to kind of wrap up because we're heading to Black Politico, might rub folks the wrong way, and I apologize. I love y'all. But,
No,
like,
why-
can y'all do like
no.
what we said though?
Why
Can-
would
yeah.
you apologize? I think that these are honest conversations that is hard for people to have, and it's not disrespecting anybody. It's telling our true feelings and emotions.
This is why I apologize. I apologize because sometimes not having the tone that you know is necessary not to rock the boat in certain situations can create chaos. So,
Well, Durance, I know you in Lincoln Heights, but ain't that what they call Cincinnati polite?
That
As
is-
Cam Hardy would say, that's
Yeah.
Cincy polite.
So, but that's what I'm saying. I will apologize by saying I am responsible for this. I am responsible for my words, but at the same time, I apologize. That don't mean that I'm gonna stop. I'm just saying I apologize that you feel a certain way. I apologize that you feel like this is not something positive to move towards. I apologize for you that you feel like conversations like this shouldn't happen more. But if you feel like that means I'm gonna stop, then you don't know the councilman. I feel for you though.
Yeah, I think things are getting better. I think that as people follow the majority, and I think that them seeing, like you said, folks like us really coming together and uniting on different issues, you know, countywide, citywide, statewide, as people see us working together, they'll eventually join in.
Hope over fear. I have hope. I have a lot of hope. I have a lot of hope with these young people. I have hope in you. Definitely got hope in Hamilton County, man, and I appreciate you definitely coming again, Sister Pal. So like always, any last words or thoughts that you have for the people? Because I know we got to head to Black Politico.
Yes, get out to vote, early vote, get out to vote August 8th. Get out to vote. And if you can't get out to vote, you know, if you cannot register, go ahead and register because we definitely need to have people register for November. It's too late to register now for August 8th, but get out to vote. But make sure you register for the November elections as well.
And lastly, check us out next Saturday. I believe that is August the 12th from 12 to 2. 12 to 2, we're going to be here doing our showcase for our young people. So they've been kicking butt all summer long. It's a 10-week process. So I know I just mentioned it real quick, and I'm going to go ahead and just knock this out real quick. So we have 3 different programs this summer. So I know I'm covering up my face, but this is all cool. So they have 3 different sections. We have one team that did all marketing and branding. We had another team that did storytelling. And obviously we have our farming team in the middle. So they worked at Jackson Street Farms. They obviously worked our produce, but then they created all the social media that happened out here. They created a whole new website. They took, went from 0 followers to over 200 like that. So they're building their piece. They're working it out. And they may not know it yet, but we got them all LLCs within their different programs. So Black Soil Society,
That's
Melanin
good.
Marketing, Urban Agro Alliance. It was something that did not exist. It's June 1st. Now 3 businesses that exist here August 12th. So make sure you come out, celebrate these young people. I'm just continuing to keep pouring in these young people, man. I know I might have sounded a little fired up earlier today, but that is a passion of ours, man. I definitely just want to see more of them and less of us, because yeah.
And let me give one last shameless plug before we get out of here. June 24th in East Westwood, we have our Hope Resource Center. We did an expungement clinic, and we had over 200 people show up.
Hell yeah.
We helped them fill out the applications for the expungement. We also had a donor that paid the fees, which came up to over $10,000. And we're also sending a lawyer to court with them for their date when they go in front of the judge for the expungement. But I just want to say that we are definitely grateful to our donors, and that because it was such a success, we had people from all over the county come because it was obviously countywide. We are doing another one September 30th. 2298 Baltimore. I keep forgetting the time. It may be 10 to 2 or 11 to 3. Follow me on social media. I'll end up posting a flyer. But it was so refreshing to see so many people show up. You know, like this is something that's really needed. People really do want to work, but they do have those barriers of things on their record that have been on there for years. And so we're just doing what we can. And to see so many people show up shows that it's a true need out in our community.
And once again, shout out to you. We got to bring you back on to talk about that later on in September. So let's make sure we stay in touch on that and have a little bit more in-depth conversation on that. That's dope. And once again, just another example of folks out here doing the work. Make sure you support them the right way, man. And as we always say, here in the zone, there are no limits, because we are the Heights. This is In the Zone, Season 2, episode of In the T. I got to get her some Drinkberry special tea. It's on me. Appreciate y'all. We out.
Bye, y'all.